Hello. In this video we're going to set the scene for our Get Well medical practice by creating the right organisational units we need for the different branch offices. We're also going to create some groups and some users and stick them in the right places, and we're going to use those to simulate the business. Along with some of the settings we've already got in place. So let's have a look at the head office DC1, and looking at our distributed file system, we've got a bunch of folders already in place, which will help us facilitate the demonstration. So we've got a backups folder, a home folder, which we want to direct everyone's we want to map everyone to their own home folder. We have MSIs, which Microsoft installers, so it's got a shared folder, so that we can install software via group policy, deploy them. We have profiles for a roaming profile. We're going to redirect all of those via group policy into this folder, and we've also got some wallpapers which we're going to put onto the different users, different groups, different organisational units, just to show how that all works together. Along with that, we're also going to look at the password policies and a lockdown policy. So we're going to create those group policies in order to make this demonstration really functional. So first of all, we can see we've got the basic folders in place that we need to demonstrate the features that we want. Let's go to the Active Directory users and computers. So in here we need to add in organisational units, users and groups. Okay, so we're just going to go right mouse click on the domain, and we're going to go new organisational unit, and I'm going to call this one Shell Harbour. And I'm going to create another one for Corrimal. New organisational unit. And another one for Victory. Victory. Okay, so they were the three general practices that are being acquired at the end of the year. So in those three different regions. So within these, we're going to create some users and groups. So I'm going to have user S1, S2, S3, C1, C2, C3, F1, F2, F3, and I'll put them in a group in each of these. So in Shell Harbour, we'll go new, where is it? A new group, there it is. Couldn't find it. I'm going to go SH, I'm going to call it group SH. It's going to be a domain local for Shell Harbour. And I'm going to create users, new user, just call them S1. And use the usual password. And I'll, for the sake of expediency, we'll just say the password never expires. Okay, we want to make S1 a member. We'll add them to the group SH. Check the name. It's going to find that group, addition to the group, and we'll check that the group members, and we'll see S1's a member. So we're going to just copy S1 to S2, and by doing that they'll already be a member of that SH group. And password never expires, that's it. And we can check that by going to the SH group and looking at the members, and you'll see S1 and S2 are both members. So copy to S3. We could script this, but it would take just as long to script it as to actually do this. Okay. And they're all members of the Shell Harbor group. There we go. Do the same thing for Coramel. So we're going to create a new group called CO for Coramel. It'll be a domain local. Create a new user. Called C1. And password never expires. And make them a member of the group. Copy to C2. Okay. Copy to C3. Okay, so if we have a look at the members, C1, 2 and 3 are all there. And then the same thing for Victory. So new group, Victory, domain local, new user, F1, F1, and here's F1, and we'll make F1 add them to the Victory group, and copy to F2. Copy to F3. Oops, passwords don't match. Can't type. Okay, that's better. So Victory group's got all 3 members. Okay. So we've got 3 organisational units, each with their own group, each with 3 users in them. Now, just in the standard one here, I'm going to create a group called Wollongong with 3 users, W1, 2 and 3. I could create an organisational unit and stick them in. Yeah, why not? New organisational unit Wollongong. And within Wollongong, we'll create a new group called WG Wollongong, domain local. Create a new user, W1. And we'll add that person to the WG group. Yep. And copy to the W2. And copy them to W3. Okay, and they're all members of the Wollongong group. Okay, so we've got all those. And just in the plain users, I'm just going to create 3 users, U1, U2, and U3. Whoops. Let's just go users. U, U1, U1. I really can't type. And password never expires. I haven't added this person to a group, they're just going to be domain users, okay? And copy to U3. Okay, so we've now got the 4 different areas or offices, or sorry, practices, medical practices. We've got the 4 medical practice organisational units. We've got users and groups in all of those, and we've got some spare users just in Active Directory. That sort of set things up because we can put, for example, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to put a different wallpaper for the different groups. For the different organisational units. Yep, and so I think we'll head now to some of the group policies. So we've got all our users, we've got all our groups, we've got all our organisational units in place. Okay, this allows us to simulate what we need for the Get Well medical practice. So if we now look at the group policy, there's the group policy management. Now, I did actually create a bunch of group policies previously. And so we've got lockdowns, so that's pretty obvious. If we put a user in a lockdown group, the lockdown policies will apply. So we need to make that policy apply only to a lockdown group. So we need a lockdown group, which we don't have at the moment. So under our tools and Active Directory users and computers, what we're going to do is create a group in here, new group. We're going to call this a global group, and we're going to call this lockdowns lockdown group. Okay. Domain local. Yeah, we might make it domain local. Lockdown group. So we've got a group there. We can apply group policies, and if we make people a member of those groups, of that group that's got the lockdown policy applied against it, then they will also get that lockdown policy, and obviously won't be able to do some things. So that's the general idea for that. I don't think there's anything else we need as far as groups go. No, probably not. Yeah, we're going to refer to the shares directly into the distributed file system mostly. And to that end, we've already got on our RAID, we've got objects already in our MSIs folder, and we've also got wallpapers in our wallpapers folder. Now, the way that you would do this is, what I would do is I would go to devices on the HODC and go down to shared folders, and I would then create a link to a folder that's on the host machine. So you just in here, go other, and pick, say, the downloads folder or something like that. Select that folder and tell it that it's read only, so you can't actually mess up anything that's in there. And there you can see I've now actually got two shared folders, one called downloads and one called VM resources. And so you could, you could go out to the resources OneDrive folder that's on our Moodle. So if we went to our diploma, that user there will do. And if you have a look at the unit guides on any of the courses, there's a student resources folder, which if you open up in a new link, will give you access to the virtual machine resources, OneDrive, all the resources that we need. And so, you would just go download all the wallpapers, and then once you've downloaded those, you'd be able to access those from, so if I hit the download on that, and it's the same thing in so I'd put this in the downloads folder, and then I'd be able to access it from the virtual machine server. So in here I can now go to my network, pick up the network discovery is turned off. So let's turn that on. And so we're looking for the VirtualBox server. It creates shared folders as a shared, like from a VirtualBox server. I can't see it there at the moment. If I do a refresh, it brought it up. Okay. So in the VBox server, you can see the downloads and the VM resources. So on the downloads, I'd be able to look at, if I looked at the date modified, and I would have that thing I was just downloading. That's old, so change the modified date. There's the wallpapers folder there. So I'd be able to access that from inside my head office domain controller. I can access all of the Control A and copy all of those to my RAID 5 drive and put them in the wallpapers folder. So that's the way to get resources into the shared folders that are on in our DFS, in our distributed file system. And everything I put in here obviously gets copied directly across to the other nodes in the DFS. So if we have a look at our domain controller 2 and have a look at the mirror drive there, the wallpapers are already all there. So as we would expect. Okay, so that's how you get there. Okay, so what we're looking at now is group policy. So let's go to our, there it is, group policy is already open. So these policies have not yet been, they've been created, but they haven't had any, they haven't been edited and set up. As you can tell, because they apply to all authenticated users. So the security filtering is all authenticated users, which means applies to everybody in the entire domain. Our default domain policy gets applied to us, and the part that we put in here was to put a home page. So what we did was we put our own web server. So if we just open up our browser and we type in web, okay, let's type in http://web, web, it goes to our local server, okay, our local web server, which is here. That's our web server, and you can have a look at on here in a drive C in the iNet pub and the www root, and this is our home page. And if you have a look at the that's the GWP web server image that gets displayed via this IIS start HTML document, which is what's registered as the default home page. And so that's what we can access when we go to our own local web server. So okay, so and we put that actually in our default domain policy. So if we right mouse click and edit our default domain policy and looked at the preferences for the user configuration and looked at the Windows, nope, it wasn't the Windows settings, it was the control panel. Control panel, we're looking at a preference here, not a policy. And we look at our internet settings. We've got here a internet version 10 default homepage, and if we look at the properties of that, you'll see that http://web, and that pulls up our homepage. So this is now the default homepage for everybody in the domain. Now you have to remember that group policy, or this policy that I just put in, preference, sorry, that I put in, applies to Internet Explorer. Okay, so you open up Internet Explorer, bang, homepage, that's what it is. So when you open up the Chrome, it doesn't pick up web as the default homepage at all. Okay, it's a different browser, not being managed, so Chrome doesn't get managed by group policy unless we go and add all of the right things into and then change the policies for. So you can actually manage Chrome via group policy if you want to. Okay, so that shows that we've got a default domain, sorry, a default website registered for all authenticated users in the domain, and it's in our default domain policy. And we can see that even over on say our Windows 10 machine here. If I open up, it'll go to the default homepage, which is the web server, and it'll be the same over here. This is on our branch office domain controller 1. Same deal. Okay, so default homepage. You can see that all applies quite well. Okay, and that's all done via the preference that's in here that's applied to all authenticated users. Okay, so the next thing we might look at then is setting up a profile being pushed back into the profile share. So yeah, what we can do is we might create a new policy. That's what we'll do. And we want this to apply to basically everyone in the domain. So we're going to go roaming profiles. Sorry, roaming. Can't type it all. Roaming profiles. Okay, so we've just created a roaming profiles. We're going to edit that. Oh, actually, before we edit that, we need to set the security filtering. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to not have all authenticated users. Now, watch what happens when I delete this. Remove. Delete this delegation. It gives me a warning straight up. Okay, group policy requires that each computer account to have permission to read the group policy object data from a domain controller in order for that policy settings to be successfully applied. So removing authenticated users may prevent the processing of the user group policies, not the computer policies, the user group policies. So please add domain computers or the authenticated user security group with at least read-only permissions so that they can read the group policy in order to have it apply. Okay, so by removing all authenticated users, that means this policy doesn't apply. So we need to put in the alternative they suggested, which was domain computers. So if I click on domain computers, so now this applies to all computers in the domain. Okay, so this is computers that are not domain controllers. Okay, so this would be the web server, Windows 10, but it wouldn't include the domain controllers. And we can see that somewhat if we look at in our Active Directory users and computers, because we have domain controllers and we have computers. So these are domain computers, these are domain controllers. They're two different types of hardware. And when you're in the policy here, you can actually see there's a specific policy for domain controllers. Okay, default domain controllers policy, rather than just everyone. So you can have a specific policy for domain controllers. Okay, so we've created a roaming profile and we've put all the domain computers rather than the domain controllers, so it's just domain computers, but we want to include users, all of the users. So I could put the actual groups in. So if I went to add, I could add in the Wollongong group. That adds in the Wollongong group. I could also add in the Corrimal group, the Shellharbour group, the Fig Tree group. But what about the actual users like U1, U2, U3 that aren't in any of the groups? They're just general users. Okay. So I could put an individual user in. So I could add an individual user. So if I go advanced, find now, down here I could find U1, U2, U3. So I could highlight. Oh, I can't highlight. Can I go? Nope, I have to do them all individually. That's a real shame, isn't it? Trying to do them all individually. So best thing to do would be for me to actually put them in a group. So I just put the whole group in. Because that's what we're going to do here. I'll put WG the whole group, so that's all of the Wollongong. And later on, we're going to use this particular concept of separating groups to put wallpapers on individual groups and individual organizational units. So it may be better than putting just an individual group in, is putting all authenticated users. So everybody that's logged into the domain. But maybe domain users rather than authenticated users, because I think authenticated users includes the administrator as well. If we have just go domain users, then that's different to, that doesn't include the administrators, I think. Okay, so I'm going to remove this one. And I'm going to add the domain users group. So here we've got, yes, we have domain admins, domain guests and domain users. I'm going to put all domain users. I'm going to put domain users in there. So I've got domain computers. So anybody that's on a domain computer, that's a domain user, will have their roaming profile, and we're going to redirect it back into the roaming profile share on the distributed file system. So I think we've got the right filtering to make sure that that applies the right way. So I might just check if I go to built-in, have I got domain users in here? I've got administrators. No, okay, so it must be under the users. So if I go domain users and look at the members, the administrator is a member of the domain user. So if he logs into a domain computer, i.e. not a server, but into a domain computer, we'll also get his profile redirected as well. So if I look at authenticated users, which is a built-in group, I think. So where is the authenticated users group come from? Okay, you would think it's from the built-ins. Interesting, can't see an actual group that says authenticated users. but we did find the domain users, which is what we're using at the moment. That's okay. So back to our policy. So what we need to do now is to create the roaming profile redirection into our distributed file system. So let's edit this policy, and it's under the computer configuration policies. I think if I go to the administrative templates and look at the system and look at the user profiles. Okay, so if I just go back to standard so I can see what's there, and I can have a better look. So what I'm going to do here is delete cached copies of roaming profiles. So what that means is that the roaming profile that's normally kept on the local hard drive will not be kept there. It'll only, because what happens is, let's just say you've got a computer that's, let's say it's a library computer and everybody logs into the, like millions of people log into that one computer. Their profile, every person's profile would then be kept on that computer. I've actually seen a case of where the hard drive filled up with the number of profiles. Extreme case, absolutely. But if you know, in theory, if I kept all of the profiles on the local machine, then it's vulnerable. So I can look at people's profiles, especially if I plugged in a USB and booted up off that. I could then go in and have a look at all of the profiles that are actually stored on that computer. However, if I delete cached copies of roaming profiles, then they're not kept there, they're only kept on the server. So I'm going to enable that and go OK. No cached copies of roaming profiles are kept on the local hard drives of our domain computers. So that's enabled. I can delete user profiles older than a specific number of days, but I'm not even caching them. So I'm going to add the administrator security group to roaming user profiles. So this policy adds the administrator security group to the roaming user profile share. Once an administrator has configured the profile created, the profile is created at the location specified by the administrator. That would give the administrator group is also given full control to the user's profile folder, which would mean that I could access everybody's profile folders. If I disable it or don't configure it, then only that user would have access to their user profile folder kept in the DFS. Because the administrator's got full rights, I could take ownership over somebody else's profile in the event that they perhaps leave the organization or something like that. But this policy adds the security group to like the administrator security group, so I've got access without having to take control over somebody else's profile. I've still got access to it. So big brother. Anybody in the administrators group's got access to everybody's stuff. And I'm going to set the roaming profile path for all users logging into this computer. So because we're talking about a computer configuration here. So this is onto this computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable it. And you can see here it recommends to add the %username% in the path to give each user a different profile directory. So they end up with their own. So I'm going to use the / the domain name, so gwmpbmw.local, and the DFS. So if I go back to the DFS management and have a look at the namespace name, where I want to put it is into this profiles path. can I copy the name? Yep, there it is. So I can go Control C, copy that, and I can put that into here, Control V. But I need to put the \% username percent username percent at the end so that it creates the subfolder for each user. Okay. Profiles. Okay, so that's now enabled. So that with this one group policy, we redirect everybody's profile into the distributed file system share, which makes it really easy to back everyone's stuff up. So all their desktops, all their documents folders, all their downloads, everything all gets redirected into here. So it's a good folder redirection, and it's just basically one policy that does your entire domain of users. Okay, so we're going to go File, Exit, and so we've done the default. So we've done a roaming profile. Sorry, we're putting roaming profiles. Now the roaming profile actually only goes into that DFS share on exit. So when a person logs in, when they log out, that's when the profile gets saved to that folder, and it's only after they've actually seen that policy. So what we need to do is we need to go to here and do a GP update. So and force. So we're forcing out that policy so that everyone can see it. And Active Directory replication will put this to all domain controllers within about 15 minutes. Or we could just do a rep admin / sync all and force out the replication to all of our replication partners. And so that forces the that change that we've done out to all of the domain controllers. And okay, so exit out of that. And that's the roaming profiles. So what we need to do is to test some of that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to log out of this user who's currently the administrator, sign out. And I'm going to log in here using another user. I'm going to use U1. So I'm going to use one of the standard users, not specifically put to any one group. So U1. And because it's a new profile, what it's doing is it's taking a copy of the default profile that's on the local machine and creating a new profile called U1. Now we can actually change that default profile that it uses it'll look at the root of the domain before it actually looks at drive C, the root of the drive. So if I put a profile up on the root of the domain, it would actually use that profile over the top of the default profile on the local machine. So it's, you can often do things like create a default profile up in the root of the domain, and you might have set icons already on the desktop. You can configure it all how you want, and that way every new user gets that desktop. So where is the root of the domain? That's a good question. If I went to if I just went to /GWMP bmw.local, That shows me all the shares. Does it actually show you the... no, it just shows you that. The sysvol system, and there's a net logon folder there as well. So these things are the root of the domain. Okay. So here's the scripts. So I could put login scripts in here, and that would then be the scripts that all users would have. But we're going to put scripts and we're going to put them into the actual group policies so that they'll automatically map to their home folders and things like that as well. So we'll do that in a later video. Anyway, that's the root of the domain. So we've logged in as this user now, and I'm going to go to DC1. I'm going to go to the drive and I want to have a look at the profiles. So you can see there's nothing there at the moment. So I'm going to log out of U1. Sign out. And I'll do a refresh on here. No, okay. So what was happening was I was probably using a locally cached profile, and it'll be the second time that I log in and log out that'll actually put the profile up there. So let's go. Sometimes it takes 2 times for it to actually apply. And if that doesn't work, what I'll do is I'll do a GP update /force on the machine. So let's do a refresh. No, nothing's happened yet. So let's do let's sign out. And I'll do a refresh on here. Nothing's happened. Okay, so nothing's come up in the profiles folder as yet. I should get something with the user's name with a .v6 at the end of it. Okay, so let's go. Let's do a GP update /force in here as well. What it means is that perhaps it hasn't, because the Windows 10 machine here is logging into the branch office domain controller. It's out over here, and whether the replications all happened to here, rep admin /show replication. Okay, so 21:55, 9:55. So that was like 20 minutes ago by the looks of it. Where I'm pretty sure I replicated this. The replication for this was only recent, so it hasn't come through as yet. What we could do is really force the replication so that so sites and services, there we go, to make sure that these group policies have come through via Active Directory replication. So what I'm going to do is, I'm on the branch office, so I could right mouse click and replicate now, right mouse click and replicate now, and I could do a, was that a push or a pull? That was from, that's to, and do the same thing on this one. From, to. Okay. That's the graphical way of doing the sync all. So if I look at, this was all 9:55 last time. So this is all saying 17 past 10 now. So that replication has all come through. Okay, so it may mean because this machine's logging in to this local domain controller rather than the head office one. So what we'll need to do is maybe sign out in and out again twice. Okay, so if I just do a refresh on that, because I'm relying on this machine putting its roaming profiles into the local branch office one, domain controller one, and then DFS replicating it across back to HODC, DC1. Okay, so we've done force the replication, we know it's happened. Let's go back to our Windows 10 machine. And let's sign out and sign back in again. It should know about the group policies now. So you can see that sort of delay can happen where the Active Directory replication hasn't gone through to all of the domain controllers, and therefore somebody out in the branch office may not know of changes that have happened in the head office because it hasn't replicated yet. Now, normally stuff would replicate within 15 minutes anyway. So we'll just run a refresh there. Nothing's happened. So we'll sign in and out again. This is 2 times since we've forced a replication out in the branch office. Okay. Nothing's come through. Okay, so I might have to run a GP update /force out on the Windows 10 machine. I'd like to have a look at the, I'm pretty sure if it hasn't happened in the DC1, then it hasn't happened out here either, profiles. Yeah, it's not there yet. Okay, so let's do a command prompt. And do a GP update /force. Normally you don't have to do this. Within 15 minutes it just works. You can see U1 V6 is now turned up in the folder. So it took a GP update /force on the Windows 10 machine to force it to get the policy, which shouldn't have had to do that, but it did. Okay, so this has actually gone to the local machine first, and then DFS replication has forced it across to here. So now that this is aware of the policies that have changed, I can log out of U1 and log in as U2, and it'll happen straight away. Sign out. Now what it's probably doing is it's putting the policy up to the local machine and deleting the cached profile as well. So it's no longer on the local machine. So if I log in as another user, U2, then that'll create the U2 folder over here and also on the branch office 1 domain controller 1. And what it's doing is actually creating a profile from the default profile that's on the local machine. And what we're going to do is going to go into the users and see whether the U1 folder is still on the local machine, because we had in our group policy that we deleted cached copies of roaming profiles. Okay, this is taking a little while. I wonder why. It's probably equivalent to hi, hello, welcome, we're creating a new profile for you, that sort of thing. So if I'd rebooted and gone into U2, it would have gone hi, welcome, we're setting things up for you, all that sort of stuff. But it's all happening in the background at the moment because it was just a sign out, sign in as a new user. Okay, so we got there eventually. So I've got 2 copies now. Yes, I have. Okay, so let's go to this PC, drive C, and users. U1 is no longer on there because that cached profile was deleted when we signed out. So we've still got the administrator. Yoda 1 and Yoda 2 are local accounts. Administrator is also... that might not be a local account, I'm not sure. Could be a local account. There is a local account called administrator, but there's also a domain administrator that we logged in on this machine before. And I'd have to log into this machine as administrator again. But that might not be covered by roaming profile, so his account might not get redirected in there anyway. Although he was a member of domain users administrator, so yeah, we could do. But it's only when you log out after it knows about the policy that it actually deletes the cached copy and then writes it up to the server. Okay, so that completes this particular video on roaming profiles and also our default web page. So we've got 2 policies in place. We've also created organizational units, users, groups in line with the folders that we've got in here that allows us to set up for the Get Well Medical Practice. So I'll end the video here, and the next video we'll look at probably wallpapers, software deployments, password policies and lockdowns, and perhaps the drive mappings as well. It might turn out to be 2 videos, but that's the next sequence. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video.